Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Out in the Woods. It's me, your friendly neighborhood host, Jacob, and today we're flying by the seat of our pants because as is the case most days now, your friendly neighborhood host is not on the ball when it comes to writing down questions and research for their guests. So this is going to be a very fun and organic conversation. And honestly, like this guy is someone that I've had my eye on for a hot minute since I sent out the call for potential guests. Really excited to pick his brain. Welcome Thomas Jackson out in the woods. Thomas, how are you doing?
I am good, and I've been excited to finally join you. I know we've had some crosses and misses when it comes to our schedules, but we finally made it together, so that's what counts.
Absolutely. Well, you're doing the work that you do is a little bit more I guess important than the work that I do. But at the same time, working in politics and also, working in customer service, both hectic hours, both are very chaotic, and in both you should definitely expect the unexpected.
No, exactly. And, I was just thinking, you said flying off the seat of your pants. Well, that's kind of how I have to do things pretty often. If it's not like the strict 9 to 5 thing, everything else is, we'll figure it out as it goes along.
Literally, we're just working with what we got. Okay, that's what we have to do, and that's going to be okay. We've made it this far, right? So Thomas, tell us, where are you from and what exactly do you do?
So I am originally from Stringer, Mississippi. I don't know if you're familiar with that area in particular.
No.
Okay, that's fine. No, I'm from Stringer, which is it's like maybe an hour drive north of Hattiesburg.
Okay.
Um, so it's really close to Laurel.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I went to undergrad at Ole Miss, and when I was there, like my first week, I was one of the only people that they were like, I've never heard of your hometown. Like, no one knows where that is. It's really small. It's like maybe 2,500 people.
So it's one of those blink and you miss it towns.
Yes, exactly.
No, I feel.
Yeah. But now I'm living in Frederick, Maryland. I work as my full-time job as a program analyst for medical research. So I actually work on an Army base, and we're looking at the medical research programs that are funded directly from Congress. But in my not 9 to 5 life, I am a member of the Democratic Central Committee for the county that I live in now, where we pretty much do all the pull the strings from behind the curtain to make politics work.
Heard that. So when is politics gonna work again? No.
Don't ask me.
Yeah. um God, I can only imagine the circus. I can only imagine the circus. And I feel like we're probably gonna get into that as the episode goes on. Um, but to keep it to you, Thomas. So like that's cool. So grows in Little Stringer, Mississippi. When did you know that you were different?
So this is a difficult question for me to answer, just because I don't think I had my full self-realization until like early to mid 20s, which not all that long ago at all. Um, but it kind of came in waves where I was like, oh, there's some unnatural thoughts there, according to what I've heard as I was growing up, and like in the church. I'm like, well, whatever that is that God's saying that we're not supposed to be, like, some of that's there. So I've got to work through that. I've got to figure that out. And so there was like a lot of suppression, because I remember like growing up, I would hear those things like, being gay is wrong, and like we're made this way and this is the way it's supposed to be. And so like that was no issue until around the age of puberty, where things start to change a little bit. And then I was like, I'm having some thoughts. And they're not the thoughts I was expecting to have. But there's always the way to say, well, I'm 12, I'm 13, I'm not going to do anything with those thoughts anyway. But then they don't go away, no matter how much you say, like, you know what, let's get a good night's sleep. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to think only straight thoughts. It didn't work.
I just love that girl. Yeah, that's right. Yes. If I think long enough, I will definitely be attracted to that one girl. Yes, who will, a couple of years down the line just be my fag hag. But yes, like,
Exactly.
yeah. Or try to sell me into an MLM, one of the two.
Or maybe both.
Por qué no los dos? Absolutely. Um, wow. So obviously, you were raised in a Christian upbringing, conservative Christian, yeah. Okay, like what denomination are we talking here?
Mostly Baptist. So my family was like a merge of Baptist and Methodist, but
Okay, yeah.
mostly Baptist.
So yeah, I was gonna say all too familiar. You don't even have to tell me much more. I hope that you don't have to tell my audience much more because there are stereotypes about Southern Baptists, and most of them are true. Most of them are most definitely true. So I guess little selfish fun question though. Are your have you come out to your family first and
Yeah.
foremost? Okay. How has that journey been for you?
It's been a lot better than I feared it would be. And so I think that was a big part of what took me so long to actually come out. Is like I just knew from all I heard growing up that it was just going to be terrible. Like it's just not something that my family could accept. But could I hope for it to be better? Absolutely. But given where my mind used to go and think that it could possibly be, I think it's much better than that. And so the whole coming out thing was, we were all in tears. Everyone was crying. Like it was one of those situations where it's like, okay, now we're all a mess. Like we have to pick up the pieces and be a family and show solidarity. And so like I may have been a little dramatic in the way that I came out to my family, but at the same time, I think it was a way for us to bond and just say like, this is how the real world works. Like we're not all going to fit the same mold.
So okay, so you said as dramatically as you came out to your family. How did you do that? What was your plan?
So I had a variety of plans that fell to shit every year. um, from undergrad, and I got 2 degrees after that. So from 18, I have been at least a 4-hour drive away from family. And so there was always sort of this, oh, when I go home, something revolutionary is going to happen. And that's not exactly the case every time.
Uh-huh.
But once it started becoming a big weight on my shoulders to say, like, I've got to share this. I've got to tell people who I am. I've got to let my family know, like, I can't continue to keep the secret. I would have a good plan and then everything would fall apart because I would get like some kind of, something would come on TV and then I would hear this homophobic comment from one of my family members. And I'm like, well, I can't go through with this plan, with this atmosphere. And so I would have to replan and regroup and do it again. And it seemed like that same thing happened time and time again for like at least 2 or 3 years. But I started like really struggling mental health wise. And like it got really bad, like almost as bad as it can get, before I was just like, you know what? I can't hold it back anymore. Like, I don't care if they say something sideways when I go home, like I've got to talk to them. And so like complete wits end, like no other options, nowhere else to turn. I just kind of sat them all down one night and was like, hey, can we turn off the TV for a second? So like, the whole, everything's going, like, it's about to be dramatic. And I just told them like, look, I haven't been completely honest with you, but I've got to tell you this before I explode. Like, I just had the worst, almost mental health crisis that I've ever had. And I felt alone, like there was no one I could turn to. So I've got to say this. And I didn't say it. And then I was like, I started going off on like, because when I came out to them, I had to come out to them a lot of different ways, because I had never had the conversation with them that I wasn't a conservative Republican anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started there. I was like, oh, my politics may be a little different from yours.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just kept going and going and going until I finally was like, just bawling. And I'm like, okay, I have to use the words. And then I finally told them. And then I opened my eyes and everyone's crying and they're like, oh, we love you, right? And it's like, it's one of those beautiful moments that like you hear about and you're like, oh, that would be ideal. But it's like, I was terrified because, just when I was in college, I had this really good friend. We're not really friends anymore, but at the time we were. He was from, maybe I shouldn't say where he's from exactly, but he was from a similar area, similar background, parents of similar belief systems, etc. He thought he was close enough to his parents that, they may say a few things that are, mean or whatever. They may ask questions, but it's going to be fine. They completely cut him off, like in every way whatsoever. And I saw myself in his shoes in like so many different ways that my thought was always, okay, if that can happen to him, it can absolutely happen to me. And so that's kind of what I was preparing myself for.
Yeah.
And that's another reason that the plan would fall apart every time. It's because like, I don't know if I'm ready to lose everyone yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm very happy that in the end, it actually turned out pretty well. It really is different for everybody, which is why it's hard. It's hard as a gay adult who has come out and is still alive to tell the tale, to try to encourage people to come out, because you really don't know. You really don't know. But at the end of the day, like, I would still say that whatever happens, just the freedom to be yourself is better than the kind of mental health struggles that you would go through had you never come out and lived with that, living, being over your head all your life,
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. It's like, I always tell people, like, you have to do it when you feel safe, when you feel like the time is right for you, when you feel like you're ready for it. Some people don't get that luxury, and they, like, people who have been on the podcast before have said like they were kind of outed when they weren't ready.
Yes.
And that's a horrible thing. But, at some point, I think it's best for your mental health, it's best for you overall and for your life to be able to come to terms with who you are and share that with other people, because I think ultimately that's what's going to save you in the end, even if it takes a longer time for you to come out than someone else did. Like, timelines are irrelevant. Like, it has to be when it works for you.
So are your parents more okay with you being gay than they are with you being a Democrat? Like, would they be better if they knew you were a log cabin Republican? Or are you actually kind of like, are you in a way bringing them a little bit more around to the left?
So this is also okay, so I will give you the very short answer and then I will give you the longer one. Does that work?
That works totally fine.
So they are not coming to the left. So that's the short answer. Long answer, yes. If I was a log cabin Republican, it would be great. But I think they've started to appreciate more that I completely turned myself inside out in college. Like, it was not just you're hitting the books and you're learning all the, the stuff you're supposed to learn. It's like, I was literally figuring out who I was, like, not just, people say, oh, I'm going to go to college and find myself. I was like ripping myself inside out, questioning everything. And it's like, I have so much more resolve about the things that I believe and the opinions I have than I ever had before. And so, one, you can disagree with me if you want, but you're not going to change my mind if it's something that I have studied and I've looked at and I've really thought about, because trust me, I know where I stand.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that they will agree with anything I say, but like they know, I guess there's that boundary of respect now where they understand, like, he has his beliefs, he has his positions, he knows where he stands, and that's not going to change. But
Yeah.
I think there's kind of a reciprocity there where it's like they're kind of the same way, like they're not budging in a lot of ways.
Right. Which, yeah, I think all millennials and Gen Z can find solace in that, because generally, yeah, none of our parents are budging. None down here, right down here. No, they lived through the golden age of Reagan. That was just enough for them. Anyway. We won't dwell too much on that bullshit, but
We could do
yeah,
a whole episode.
we could absolutely do a whole episode on Ronald Reagan. So I guess how did you become involved in activism?
So it's something that kind of evolved in me. I spent a lot of time with my one grandma growing up, and like she was very into political things. Like she was always watching the news. I don't know if she is now. She's had like this weird falling out after the recent election, which whatever.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't question it as long as Fox isn't on her TV all the time. Like I'm happy, whatever that may be. Um, but no, like I would hear about current events a lot when I spent time with her. And then it kind of got me interested in just the way things worked in terms of like actually getting policy done and things of that sort. Um, but then I got around a crowd of people who were very different from me, who had different, lived experiences, different views of things. And they, throughout my 4 years of college, like really kind of challenged me. And I won't say that at least to them, I didn't seem like I was budging, but it took being in a different environment, seeing that everyone's walk of life was not the same as mine, for me to really start thinking, okay, what is it that connects us versus what is it that separates us? And then along with that, my career trajectory was in healthcare. And so I started seeing like, well, I know these problems with healthcare from what I've experienced, what my family's experienced, but they are 10 times worse for people that are different from us, people who look different or from different backgrounds. There's a huge difference there between
Yes.
who has access, who doesn't have access, who has quality, who doesn't have quality. And so that's that realization, and then starting to see like there were things that could be done about that to make that better. That's sort of the thing that really propelled me into the political sphere, to be like, if we get people together, if we make sure people vote and vote for the right people, we
Yes.
can sort of force some of these things to change. And so that's kind of a very long way of saying it, that it just kind of everything evolved together. And it's like this big puddle of mush of history, but like here I am.
Right, absolutely. I also think like I experienced a very similar thing to you. Whenever I went to the School of the Arts, my last 2 years of high school, that I was living with people from all over Mississippi, including the Mississippi Delta, which is one of, I mean, it's like a third world country in the United States. It's incredible, because you take for granted all of these things that you've learned over your life to be true, and all the things that the people that you trusted would tell you about certain types of people and people from certain areas. you take these things and you internalize them and you think that they are gospel, and then you actually meet somebody from these places and who fits these descriptions, and you actually get to know them and you get to know their lived experience, and it completely just shatters all of that. It completely shatters all of that, and it really makes you question everything. I mean, you talk about like, I mean that's the thing, and that's part of turning yourself inside out. That's part of, tearing away the layers and finding what's at the core, is actually shattering all of those things that you learned, unlearning things, breaking generational curses, as you would see on, Facebook. It's just like, it's absolutely, it's all valid, it's all true. Now, so like, how, here's the real tea. And like, if you feel like you can't share your honest opinion just for the sake, of, keeping your place with, the Democratic Party, how good of a job do you think the Democrats are doing right now? This is another selfish question, because this is not necessarily a contention point or a debate, but I'm genuinely interested, because you are actually in there doing the work. So I'm just interested to hear your perspective.
So okay, let me just give my disclaimer that I'm not here in the official capacity of representing any candidate or committee. I am here on my personal capacity.
Thumbs up. We got you. Everybody out there who's listening, please take that to heart and remember that before you start foaming at the mouth or wanting to jump on his case. Go ahead.
I am frustrated. I am disappointed. I want more. And that's, I think, the best way that I can sum up how I feel now. So if you look back just a few months in or I guess a year now, in my Facebook history, you will see that Joseph Robinette Biden was not my first choice to be the Democratic nominee for president. Like I said, I wanted more. And I came around, my first candidate didn't win, my second candidate didn't win, my third, fourth, fifth candidates didn't win. But we got what we got. And, I was happy about that after a small period of mourning. But then I had like the internal celebration. It's like, okay, many of the things that I wanted to see are on this guy's agenda. And so, you know what, it's still going to be good. But then it's like, oh, it's going to be good. And then time moves on. It's like, it'll be good. But then time keeps moving on. It's like, when's it going to get good? I feel like there's so much more that could be happening. There's so much more pressure that could be placed where it needs to be placed to actually get things done, that the presidency has a bully pulpit that is not being used. I want more. I want more. So much more.
I think, or rather, I would hope that a lot of people feel the same way, because I absolutely feel the same way. I feel like the Overton window in the United States has been shifted so far to the right that, I mean, really and truly, Joe Biden is nothing more than like a centrist, if you really boil down. I mean, sure, his platform and all the things that he promised and everything like that seemed very slightly progressive. And then like the payoff in the end, what he's actually returning, is not is not anywhere. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, the thing is, like, for me, I was definitely very unhappy when Joe Biden, got the nomination ultimately. I think we were all just in that stage where we were like, well, I would rather choose him over a transparent fascist. Like, obviously, like, I will choose this devil over the other devil. However, I think it's almost just like, you have like I think we've been witnessing too much negative history over the course of the past 5 years. And we kind of were hoping for I thought that this would kind of like open people's eyes to the potential for a radical change. And it's not happening. I mean, I think we're kind of returning to business as usual, pre-Trump. And business as usual pre-Trump is just not enough. I mean, honestly, I really think that, as I say, business as usual is part of exactly why Trump got elected in the first place, was because people were tired of the status quo and people were tired of things not getting done. However, they chose the wrong avenue. A great majority of them. It was very misplaced. I mean, the thing is, like, obviously we're all feeling that, but of course their votes were completely misplaced and definitely in the wrong hands, definitely on the wrong side of the coin, to say the least.
Well, and
Yeah.
I hear so much talk of like, oh, we're going to return to normal or something. And I'm like, well, guess what happened after normal though? Like, remember that time, like when we had the status quo pre-Trump, what happened right after that? Trump, right? So let's maybe not put ourselves back in the position where that's the outcome again. I like Biden as a person. I think he is a cool guy. I still have a little bit of optimism about him. It's hard for me to look at the things that have been accomplished and just be like excited about what's going to happen this year in the elections and what's going to happen in 2024. Yes. I can look at, the child tax credit was wonderful. The COVID relief bill was wonderful. The fact that there have been expansions in testing, expansions in vaccination, and those types of supports, great things, but we need more, because the attention span of voters, the attention span of basically everyone is not long enough that you're like, okay, it's February 2022, but you remember how good it was in February 2021. That's what I'm holding on to for 4 years. Like, no, that's not where anyone is.
Right.
So I enjoy being part of the process where I'm able to help people get registered to vote, express to people why it's important to show up. But sometimes it's hard to make the case to say, like, you got to vote for this person because they're going to carry out this person's agenda, when it's like the person at the top is not carrying out the person at the top's agenda. Like, it's a challenge to express that to people, that like, this is going to get better if you vote, when the last time you voted, it didn't get better.
And I think too, like, there's just a general distrust of the government. I think now more so than ever, and I do not blame anybody. I don't really trust, and like, shame on me. I don't trust the government either. Like, really and truly, it's not necessarily that I feel like I'm being, how do I say this? I don't feel like there's anything obvious. How do I say this? I don't think the government has given us a reason to believe that they're actually working in favor of the American people for the past couple of years. Like, I really don't. Like, I think no matter who you put at the top, I mean, like, for instance, President Obama kind of took credit for the historic gay marriage ruling, but like, he had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, maybe if you want to say that putting Sotomayor on, on the Supreme Court helped that happen, sure, but like, ultimately he had no control over whether or not, that was legalized. Just in the same way that we may completely lose Roe versus Wade this year, that very well could be completely overturned and abortion rights could be stripped away from America and be left to a state by state basis. In which case, it's terrible, but like at the same time, do you think Joe Biden wants to take credit for that? You know, like what? But that's the thing. Like that's kind of the American perception, and I think like I think in a way like the Republicans have already won the long game, just because, for instance, we have Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court now, and we also have Amy Coney Barrett on there as well. And they were kind of packaged as like nonpartisan, very straightforward. They really just care about the law by Donald Trump. However, it's kind of it's an ace in a hole. It's the ace in a hole for uh, this kind of conservative agenda that has been pushed forward. And like I think the big problem with the Democrats, most of them anyway, we have, first of all, and here I am going off on a tangent, but Thomas, please interject as you feel. But like, we don't have many millennials representing us in America, even though like the older generations are dying off. We still are having a hard time getting anyone younger than like 35 put in office. And that's a big problem. That's a huge problem because none of these candidates, none of these people that we currently have really are in touch with the now, and they don't really care to be. I think at this point, even if they know, like I feel like even if they know what's going on is a problem, all they really care about is just making sure that they stay in their position and continuing to lobby and making their money, you know. I mean, because we have people like AOC, who is just, I mean, she's infamous. Like people either love her or they hate her. I mean, I personally believe that AOC has a lot of great potential. I really like her spunk. I really like that she is really trying to like get like wake people up around her. Um Unfortunately, have you seen Don't Look Up yet on Netflix?
I have not, but I need to watch it.
Okay, so for anyone that has seen Don't Look Up, and you'll understand this, she feels very much like Jennifer Lawrence in Don't Look Up, where she's saying everything that like is obvious and true and needs to kind of be said, because she's just like she's really aware of everything that's wrong. And no matter what, but the thing is, like, she can't package it well, so people are just like, she's so fucking crazy. Like, look at her like screaming and yelling about like all of these things that are wrong. Like, look at her wearing that Eat the Rich dress. Jesus Christ. Or Tax the Rich, I'm sorry. It should have said Eat the Rich, but that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, I don't think anyone is genuinely interested in creating change. That's what I don't trust about the government. I believe that they're more interested in keeping the status quo, as it were. I mean, even, and once again, like, put me on the cross for this, but like the Democratic National Convention is directly responsible for Donald Trump winning, or well, is one of the things that is directly responsible for Donald Trump winning, for platforming Hillary Clinton the way that they did.
Yeah, and you cannot say things like that in most Democratic circles. And so I agree with you. I was part of the whole, like, is no one else seeing this? Like with what was her name? Debbie Wasserman Schultz and
Yes.
Bill. I was like, there's like nothing happened to them. Like one's still in Congress, the other has a cushy job at, I forget, MSNBC or CNN, one or the other. But I think there's no accountability. So like you can do whatever you want to do once you have, that title behind your name, and you're not being prosecuted for anything. Like you can get away with anything you want. And I think that's sort of, so this is me going off on a tangent now, but like that's sort of, to me, what one of the biggest problems in, I won't even just say modern politics, but like in living memory of politics, is that people can answer to whoever can pay them the most money, but it has nothing to do with the people that vote for them, as long as they can have someone to bankroll a campaign and bankroll their messaging and pay for all these pretty flyers and to get something interjecting the programming on Fox News. Like, they won. That's how they win. And once they get to wherever they're going, whether it's the Capitol in Jackson or whether they get to DC, they're going to do what they're told to do by the people who pay them the most money.
Correct.
And,
Correct.
and so that's why I really appreciate, like you mentioned AOC as an example. One reason I really appreciate her is because she has taken notice of that and has freed herself from that sort of bondage of expectation that, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, screw everyone else. That's not something that, if you're not taking money from people that want to buy your influence, you don't have to worry about pleasing them and giving them that influence, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, and for a lot of conservative people specifically who kind of disregard her, like, isn't she kind of like the best example of like what the American dream should be, how politics should work? I mean, she literally was a bartender who was scrounging together money by the skin of her teeth to run a campaign to get where she is, and she won. Like, isn't that the kind of champion of the people that we should be dreaming about? Isn't that how it should work? Other than like finding out that other than like starting smear campaigns and getting all of this money from like all of these different PACs to fund your campaign, and sucking the dick of like big oil or big pharma or big anything, just to make sure, once again, scratching their back so that they will scratch yours. I mean, literally, like, it's ridiculous. I feel like generally the American people see that the mask is off. And I'm not saying that we need more parties, or that the two-party system is flawed or whatever. I mean, it is. I think that there is obviously like generally a flaw there, but like, I just don't see enough progress, and I don't see enough like truly progressive candidates. I mean, even Pete Buttigieg, like Pete Buttigieg, first, as far as I know, first openly gay man other than Abraham Lincoln to run for just kidding. First openly gay man to run for office, to run for president specifically. The thing about him is, like, on paper he sounds great. It's like, okay, yeah, he's like, he went to an Ivy League school, he's very educated, he's a millennial, he was in the military, like, these are all great buzzwords that we need to hear. But ultimately, where he gets his money from, where he like is able to fund his campaign from, is the fact that he worked for like a private military contractor, that helped aid in some very questionable war efforts all around the world. And, when you really boil him down, like, he is just another person trying to start their politician career, at the end of the day, when you really boil it down. And so, like, yeah, I mean, even like, I remember, wasn't it Pete Buttigieg that was like, I can't guarantee you Medicare for all, but I can guarantee you Medicare for some, or like get Medicare for most. And it's like, well, sure, maybe your PR team told you that, like, okay, let's try to give them realistic expectations would be a good thing. But like, even then, like, realistic expectations are not even are even still, they still feel like a smokescreen, because it just doesn't seem like the math adds up when you look at how much tax revenue the US government has. You know what I mean?
Well, so he very famously transformed that message to Medicare for all who want it, which just like, it's so intentionally misleading. And I will tell you, when I first learned about Pete Buttigieg, I was so excited.
Same.
When he finally announced he was running, I'm like, oh my God, I love this guy. But then just seeing like there wasn't really you couldn't detect any fortitude in any of the beliefs he seemed to espouse. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
you could see where he would say something very strongly in one way, but then it's not something that's like, oh, you know, my whole life I've believed this, or like, this is something that I am an advocate for. It's more like, well, I consulted with people who had large numbers of zeros in their accounts and transferred many of them to my accounts. And now that is what I believe. Like, very robotic, like, there has been an exchange of money in turn for me to say these things, and now I am saying them. Like,
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, like, you know, I guess we're gonna have to go ahead and jump down this rabbit hole and fire this missile. But you know, at least back in 2016, and I would still say in 2020, God love him, you know, that's one thing that I have always admired about Bernie Sanders. Yeah, and that's the thing, like, unfortunately, just by me saying that, I feel like there are automatically, you know, any listeners out there who may believe one way or the other are going to either call me a radical leftist, which I mean, I guess I am, but like, also like that, or we're gonna have people who are gonna call me a Bernie bro, you know, because like, and honestly, even that feels like the whole Bernie bro thing feels manufactured by the DNC. Like, it feels like they were like, okay, social media coordinators, we need to get out there and make sure that we portray anybody that likes Bernie Sanders as a misogynist. Like, we need to get out there and make sure that we smear him, so that even though he has great ideas that would greatly help the American people, like, we need to make sure we find something that we can fuck him over with. And like, literally, they found it in Bernie Bros. I mean, literally, like, Hillary Clinton could literally just be like, well, Bernie, like, I don't really think that's great. And if Bernie called her on that, immediately people would be like, well, that's just his misogyny show, you know, like, just like I believe Elizabeth Warren at one point, you know, during a debate, you know, she said that she claimed that he said that he didn't believe that a woman could be president, which once again fed right back into that. And I used to have a ton of respect for Elizabeth Warren. um as time went on, I kind of like, and I think that's the real thing where I have lost a lot of trust in the government. I guess we can go back to that, is like, as time has gone on, I've found that a lot of these candidates that I put a lot of faith and belief in, if you really analyze their behavior and the more time you give them with a platform and the ability to talk, they kind of ruin that for you, and you kind of start seeing behind their facade, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we will never know what actually goes on between one politician and the other.
Yes.
You know, like, whether that's something that was actually ever said, or if it's like, oh, well, maybe this is a direction I can take to set myself apart. Like, who knows? But what I will say is that the voices of people who aren't financially compromised are always drowned out as much as possible. And that's like, no one other than the people following people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren actually knew the things that they were doing. Like, media didn't cover that there were 14, 15,000 people at every event that those two put on. Like, I was, so you remember then, I guess, the time when Bernie had a heart attack. He was off the campaign trail for a while, and then he had the big Bernie's back rally.
Yes.
I was there. I got to see Bernie speak. I got to see Jane. I got to see Nina Turner and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Very cool. It was very cool. But that just wasn't, you know, you look at the social media around that bubble and it's everywhere, but you look on something like CNN, MSNBC, they may have mentioned it. They're like, oh, he had a heart attack and look, now he's doing rallies again, and that's it. And then they're on to something else, like, oh, and this is what the stock market's doing today. Like, how about tell us, like, you know, what these actual issues are, and what people are proposing to do to address those issues. Because as simple as that sounds, I feel like that is never a straightforward thing that you can take from the news when you watch it. It's like, oh, people are battling over something. And I'm like, okay, well, like, tell us why they're fighting, like what the issue is, what are the statistics there, and then what is the fight about? But no, it's like, oh, the Democrats have proposed this, and now the Republicans are opposing it, and the Republicans are proposing this, and the Democrats are opposing it. I'm like, no one knows what's going on.
Right. So on that note, we're gonna take a quick break, but Thomas, we will come right back to jump a little bit more into politics and a little bit more into my guest Thomas Jackson right after this break. And we're back. If any of you are still here with us after all of that political talk, thank you for staying with us. I can't promise that it's not going to get less political, but here we go. Anyway, so yeah, obviously, like we both have qualms with the Democratic Party. I think specifically, I guess this leads into my next question. But how does it feel for you as a minority and as somebody that potentially has rights to lose, when you see the party that we both vote for, because that's kind of our only option, be kind of spineless, because it seems like every single time, it comes time to split the vote, when Republicans really want to pass something, you normally see Democrats reach across the aisle far more, or rather 100% of the time, compared to whenever the Democrats have something really progressive that they want to pass across. And you never see Republicans hardly reach across the aisle to do the same. And yet it seems like we are more interested in keeping the peace, or being able to give that olive branch when the same is not given to us. I mean, I think it kind of even goes back to like the Capitol riots. God, the Capitol riots. I just remember after the Capitol riots, I mean, even during the Trump presidency, it's like, we need to go back to a time of the true American politics when democracy was sacred, and this and this and that, and we need to go back to a time of civility and stuff like that, when in reality, like, I would say for the past 10 decades, I mean, I would even say, like, since like maybe even the Clinton administration, like, things have been anything but civil. I feel like it was a little bit more civil, but I think the more as time went on and we tried to be like, as things get more progressive, the less civil politicians are going to be. I mean, case in point, Mitch McConnell. I don't even have to say anything else. And audience, if you're listening right now and you're like, what do you mean? Just go look up Mitch McConnell's fucking track record. That's all I'm going to say on that. But like, literally, like, once again, as a minority, it's so scary because it's like, we have so much to lose. So like, I guess, like, how does that make you feel, and what kind of work do you really want to be doing with the Democratic Committee in Maryland?
So it feels a lot like betrayal, often, because you hear all the talk, right? They're candidates on the campaign trail, and they go out and they make all these beautiful promises, and it's like, this is something that's really going to have an impact on my life, and they're really there, they stand with me, and then the chance comes right in front of them, like within reach, and they just don't go for it. And I know that's kind of romanticizing the idea a little bit, right? Like, it's never, oh, here's your legislation, just grab it. But when it comes to things like, it feels like we are asking permission for the people who have said time and time again, like you mentioned Mitch McConnell, he said he's going to make sure that Obama never gets anything done. And then now when Biden's in office, he said the same thing, like verbatim. I want to make sure that nothing gets done in the Biden administration. He's told us who he is several times. And I just don't understand this old school naivete that says, you know what, that's just rhetoric. If we sit down and have a good old boy chat over some, I don't know, gross beer or something, like we're all going to just sing kumbaya and we're going to pass the bill. Like that's not how it works anymore. We don't have the, oh, you know what, you're a Republican and on screen I hate you and I'm a Democrat and on screen you hate me, but we're going to shake hands behind the scenes. They don't like each other in any way. Like they're not going to agree in any way. So I think just stop with the posturing, stop with the everything's great and cool and we're all agreeable nonsense, and just say, like, we are at a crossroads where we know no matter what we do, the other side is not going to go along with us. So we've got to get done what we can with the mandate that voters provided us. It's a slim mandate. It's literally we have to have the vice president break a tie in the Senate, but it's a mandate nonetheless. This is where the votes stand. We are in charge in terms of, like we have the White House, we have the House. Technically, we have the Senate. Mm-hmm. And we have, if we don't have anything to show for it, we got historic voter turnout in 2020 because all these things could get done, right? Well, if they're not getting done, what incentive does that give people to show up in November 2022 to expand those majorities or even to retain the majorities as they are? We have to have something to show for it. We made a lot of promises. If we're not actually showing people that we're fighting to make those promises come true, what the hell's the point of them showing up to the polls again? Like, oh, I voted for this and I realize I didn't get it, but you know what? I'm going to give it one more chance. No, you don't get a second chance. Like, we can't just keep giving you chance after chance after chance when you've shown us who you are several times and you're not getting this done.
Absolutely. And I think, first of all, it's a volatile climate just as far as voters go. Like, I mean, I would even consider myself a volatile voter where it's like, sure, I'll choose the devil I have to choose. But like, ultimately, like, I want to hold these people accountable if they're going to claim to be working for me. You know what I mean? Like, and I think the scariest illustration of like what kind of like nightmare scenario we're living in right now is, like whenever like the second impeachment trial rolled around, and even though like there was clear and present danger for so many Republican politicians whenever the Capitol was being raided, they still were like, I don't think this was his fault at all. Like, no, obviously not. This is just a sham right now. Like, stop it. Like, literally, you could have died. You could, like, those people, no matter what you believe, were out for blood. They were out for blood. And if they weren't so inept, and if security didn't do their job well enough, you would have absolutely fucking died. Like, they got you out of the congressional chamber just in time for the fucking Q shaman to go in there and make an ass of himself at the fucking speaker's podium. Like, literally, like, you were like this close. Like they had explosives, they had weapons. And still, at the end of all of that, no, like, obviously, no, like, it wasn't Donald Trump's fault. Like, I don't know why we're having this trial right now. Like, this is the liberals gone crazy. Like, it's scary. Like, it really, like, it's not only scary, like, I think it's less scary than infuriating. Like, it actually, like, makes my blood boil every time I think of, like, what I have witnessed over the past 5 or 6 years, like, in politics. It's absolutely ridiculous. And once again, I guess this goes back to like, what do you want to do? Like, obviously, like, you're in the system. Maybe you're not making all of the decisions. Obviously, you're kind of I wouldn't say that. Well, I don't know what rung of the ladder would you say that you're on as far as the Democratic committee goes?
So I am a member of the county's committee, which is a part of the state's committee of the Democratic Party. And it's the state party that makes decisions about, if we're going to change the rules of how Democrats campaign or the way that Democrats, I'm trying to think, just the way they do outreach and things like that. So like the methods of getting elected, the methods of messaging and things of that sort, those are more of the things that we are concerned with. So it's not, we don't do policy at all, which for me can be frustrating because I'm a very policy oriented person. Actually, I have a degree in policy, so like that's what I want to be doing. So right now it's just a matter of like outreach and turnout and registration and things of that sort. What I want to be doing is, one, pushing out better messaging, because I think, like I kind of mentioned earlier, there are great things that have been accomplished since the inauguration of Biden last year, but name five. Name
I
five,
can't.
because exactly. And most people can't because they don't talk about them. They don't go, like, I know at a recent press conference, Biden said something like he's going to start going around the country and talking about all the things that he's accomplished. I'm like, that's what was supposed to happen 6 months ago. Like,
Right.
yes, do that, but like, you should never stop doing that. Like, go around, tell people what you've done, tell people what you're fighting for, say what's been accomplished. But then also, like, I think you have to show up in West Virginia and talk to the people of West Virginia and say, look, you've got a senator in Joe Manchin who claims to be a Democrat, but he's obstructing everything that Democrats are trying to do. The things
Literally.
that you have said in poll after poll after poll, you support, you need, you want to see, he is denying you that. Show up in his backyard. Do the same in Arizona for Senator Kirsten Sinema. Say, like, she made you all these promises when she first ran, and she is reneging on all of them. Why is that? Why does she deserve your vote? Like, put the pressure on them, destroy them if you have to, but like, enough of this, oh, if we play nice and, we go in the back room and we have our patty cake time for 10 hours and I beg them, please, like, suddenly everything's going to fall in place. Like, it's naive to the point of being selfishly ignorant. Like, it's not going to happen. So stop with this facade of everything is just like it was back in the good old days. We can have a smoke or a drink in the back, talk it over, and then we're all going to come out shaking hands. Like, no, there's one side that is never going to listen to the other. You have to corral your own people, and you have to actually start putting your fist down. Like, enough.
Do you see an avenue to the kind of change that you would want to create in your future?
I do, and it's very idealistic. It's very very contingent on a lot of cogs moving at the same time. So like, it's one of those avenues that's waiting on an infrastructure bill.
Heard that. Yeah.
So like, I mean, there are promising things that I'm seeing come through, like, in spite of all the negative, in spite of all that's not coming through. You have people like Speaker Nancy Pelosi that's looking at potentially bringing forth legislation that would prevent members of Congress from trading in stocks, which is huge. People don't really understand, I think, why that's a problem, because it's never talked about. Like, you will not find a news anchor that will talk about it.
We didn't understand that until COVID. Literally, not until COVID did we have any inkling that was something that actually happened,
Well, and like, just to break it down really quick, the people who have the most in-depth and sensitive information in the country are elected officials. So people in the United States Congress will get briefings about things that are going on all over the world. They know about finance before you hear the word finance. They know about security threats before you even know what a security threat is, right? They know these things because they have briefings, because the idea is, I know this is going to sound radical, but the idea is they are helping serve the people and keep the people safe. And they're supposed to be aware of things so that they can act. I know that's shocking, but that's how it's supposed to work. So they have access to this information before anyone else does. But that information directly affects the money that organizations are making, that corporations are making. And so those types of information allow them to know exactly what they should invest in, because in 2 months' time, all is going to go to shit and their stocks are going to go up and they can pull out and make millions. That, I mean, does that seem fair at all to you? Like, does that seem like it's something that, like, that's just some great privilege that should be given to anyone? Like, it's
But
clearly
Thomas, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, either they said something really good about gay people a couple of years ago, or they're a good Christian Sunday school teacher from the middle of nowhere. So like, why would they do, haven't they earned the right to have those stocks? Like, I really don't care, like,
Yeah.
it's all about branding, isn't it?
It is. And I have a lot of respect for people who have accomplished so much in their history, like, in their career. If they've gotten us landmark legislation done in the past, like, that's great, thank you for that. But if you are not willing to get with the times and see, like, we have real things that are happening now that weren't happening 45 years ago when you first got elected. We have things that are going to impact, yes, our generation, but generations to come, that you're going to be dead for. So it doesn't matter to you. And this is the moment of choosing. Do you continue to do what you did starting 45 years ago when you first got elected? Or do you step up and say, hey, maybe I need to be in touch with the real world and start making moves on things that are going to impact people today, but not just today, also into the future? I think just that small thing of saying, oh, maybe we can start banning people in Congress from trading in stocks. I think that's one small step in that direction, to say that we're going to be a less compromised system. It's not the win all, like, it's not the golden bullet, but I think it's a big start. I think it's a significant step. And that's the kind of thing that gives me hope. I will not say that I am 100% confident that something's going to happen there, but I will say the fact that people are starting to turn and starting to say, oh, we may need to look into this, I think is promising, because it says to me that one day there could be true accountability to the people and not just to corporations and billionaires.
Well, and I was going to say, absolutely. And I want to be just as hopeful as you are. And I'm not claiming naivety here, because once again, you're out there doing the fucking work. Okay. You probably know 10 billion times more about what is going on than I currently do. However, I mean, it's hard to be hopeful as a millennial American right now, after we saw what happened with A, campaign finance reform, and B, I mean, I have no bones about saying that I hate Donald Trump and that I thought he was a shitty president. However, one of the only things where I was like, I think that Donald Trump should absolutely do that, I support that decision for him 100%, was term limits on Congress. Like, literally, like, some congressional leaders like Bernie Sanders have been doing a great job every single or rather have at least been honest and trying to do the best they could throughout their careers. However, once again, most of these people are just clinging on to a paycheck, and that did not happen. He quickly dropped that, just like Joe Biden dropped, forgiving student loan debt, So, I mean, once again, I would like for these things to happen, but as it stands right now, it's hard to believe that things will get better. Um, as long as the current powers that be have money, so
Well,
yeah.
I completely get that. And trust me, I go through periods of time where I'm like, none of this is worth anything. Like, what am I wasting my time on this for? But at the same time, it's another thing that gives me hope. Like, one, seeing, yes, there is some movement there, but knowing where that movement comes from. And somewhere down the line, this is something else that doesn't get talked about on media that much, but somewhere down the line, you can trace it to a bunch of pissed off people and people saying, I've had enough of this. Like, I've got to contact someone. I've got to go out and demonstrate. I've got to advocate. I've got to be an activist, whatever. It's people that finally say, this is what I'm demanding of my representation. That's what moves someone. If someone, and it's kind of shitty to say this, but if someone sees themselves possibly losing a grip on power, like, oh, there's a threat of a challenger to my position that I've been holding comfortably for 30 years. Those are the types of things that start to speak to people. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it has been working the last few campaign cycles, very slowly, much more slowly than I would like. But that's the kind of thing that gives me hope, is that those things can turn. And, again, we talked about Representative AOC earlier. That's exactly what happened in New York's 14th Congressional District. They had someone, he was the number 4 Democrat in the country. He lost to a challenger, politically speaking, a nobody. Nobody had heard of her. Nobody knew who she was. He lost to her. Why? Because he didn't show up to his own district. People who voted for him time and time again, they're like, well, I know I lean more toward this party, but I don't really know this guy. Like, he's just always on the ballot, so I always pick him. They didn't know what he looked like. They didn't know what he sounded like. They couldn't even tell you the last time he had been in the district or anything he had done for them. But someone challenged that. A bunch of people stood up and said, I want something more. And then they had a candidate for that. They put up one of their own. That's the kind of thing that gives me hope, because it says, as long as we in some way keep people engaged, they're not just going to continue letting someone pull the wool over their eyes and be convinced that, oh, this is the best that we can have. No, people will start to demand better. And while I think millions and millions of people did that in this past presidential election, obviously it wasn't quite enough because of how things turned out, but it made a huge difference. Like, it still made a huge difference because of the way that the actual Democratic Party's platform was crafted. That was thanks to people. And we're not carrying out that platform right now, but we have a way, if people would just keep the pressure there to say, you ran on the Democratic platform. It is your responsibility to adhere to that platform and get this done, because that is what your party says it stands for. It gives us a little bit of traction there to say, you made these promises. We voted for you for these reasons. Now get it done, or we'll vote for someone else. And I like knowing that people have that kind of power.
You have made some incredible points. Yeah, absolutely. No, like I 100% agree. And honestly, like, we have so much more to talk about. So Thomas, I think you might actually be my first two-parter. So audience, we're going to end this one here. And you can stay tuned next week to hear a little bit more about Thomas, his story, and a little bit more, I guess, on Thomas's point of view. So stay tuned. This is our first two-parter out here in these woods.